Hello and welcome to the France 24's interview. Our special guest today is John Bercow, the Speaker of the House of Commons of the British Parliament. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for being with us.
Gracias. It is my pleasure.
I would like to start with, how did you become the Speaker?
I was elected from a field of 10 candidates by secret ballot of all of the members of the House of Commons. And I was elected on the 22nd of June 2009 by 322 votes. To my nearest rival in the third and final ballot, he had 271 votes. And then at the start of each parliament thereafter, in 2010, 2015 and 2017, I had to be re-elected by my colleagues with the simple question, should this person be allowed to return to the chair? Unfortunately for me, in each case, the answer was yes. So I was elected, and then I've since been re-elected 3 times by my colleagues.
As I understand it, your grandfather was an immigrant. Has this had an impact on your political outlook?
That's a very interesting question. If truth be told, I'm not conscious that the fact that I had an immigrant grandfather impacted on me in the early years. You might have thought it would. You might have thought it would make me sympathetic to migrants or to asylum seekers. If truth be told, I'm rather ashamed to say this, it didn't in the first place. But the older I've got, in a sense, the more I've reflected on the fact that although I'm part of the establishment, the British establishment, I'm really not an establishment figure. I am an outsider. I am a representative of a minority. I'm of Jewish origin. And so I think it probably did impact upon me in the end, but not as you would expect early in my life. It's impacted on me more as I've got older.
You have been the Speaker for 10 years and an MP for more than 20. Do you remember any political turmoil like Brexit in British politics?
No, I don't remember any turmoil or turbulence quite like the present situation. The truth of the matter is that the country is divided. There is no denying it. There is no overcoming or gainsaying that simple fact. Roughly half the population wants Britain to leave the European Union, and an almost exactly the same proportion of the electorate would rather us stay in. The referendum was won by the supporters of Brexit, but 3 years later, I don't sense that there is anything approaching a national consensus. There are still very large numbers of people who want to leave, and in some cases are very angry that we haven't left the European Union, and they're saying, what's going on? We cast a vote, we made a decision, we expected it to be implemented, get on with it. But then there's another part of the population, which is very large, which is saying, hey, wait a minute, we know more now. We see the dangers. We didn't know that Brexit would mean this happening. We want to reconsider. So Parliament has got a responsibility to grapple with the issue and try to forge a way forward. But if you ask me, am I sure what will happen? No. And anybody who says he or she is sure what will happen in the next few months is either a very, very, very clever person, Louisa, much cleverer than I, or a reckless fool.
Mr. Speaker, do you think this Parliament can agree any position on Brexit?
I think it is possible that there could be agreement later in the year.
When will that be?
It is possible there could be agreement before the end of October. I wouldn't bet my house on it. Indeed, I wouldn't bet anything on it. But it is possible that under the pressure of time, some sort of agreement with the EU will be approved by the UK Parliament. The alternatives to that are we either leave with no deal, which I do not think most people in Parliament want to do. Some do, but most don't. or it is possible that the matter could be open to a further extension between the UK and the EU. But that, of course, is not our right. It would have to be agreed by the EU. It's not for me to say that that should happen, but if you're asking me what are the possibilities are leaving with no deal, leaving with a deal, or the electorate considering the matter again. And do I think we'll have the same discussion in 2 years' time? No, I think it will be resolved before then. But if you're looking me in the eye, Louisa, and saying, Mr. Speaker, are you confident that this matter will be sorted definitively by the 31st of October? I am not confident of that.
Do you think Brexit is going to happen or no?
I think it's slightly more likely that it will because of that previous referendum decision and because so far there hasn't been a majority in Parliament to have what is called a second referendum, a so-called people's vote. But if there isn't an agreement approved by Parliament, and at the moment there's no sign of an agreement being approved by Parliament, and if Parliament says we do not want to leave without an agreement, well, how many options are left? Sherlock Holmes used to say in those famous novels, when all the other possibilities have been eliminated, the remaining possibility, however improbable, must be true. So if there isn't an agreement, and we don't want to leave with no agreement, that really leaves either an election or a referendum. Now, I'm not saying that will happen, but it's possible. There is a small majority chance that we will leave this year. It's probably a majority chance, but not much. But I think that there is quite a strong chance that the process will take longer, and I wouldn't want to predict what the outcome will be. So if you're saying to me, is the outcome basically assured? We will definitely leave and it's just a matter of time. I would say no, we will probably leave, but it's not assured. Might we end up staying? We might. I'm sorry if you think I'm sitting on the fence or your viewers think, hey, this guy's not giving a straight answer. I am giving an honest answer. It's just that the truth is that the matter is still hotly contested. There are strong differences of opinion. There is no sign of a consensus. I cannot safely predict what the outcome will be. The only safe prediction I think I can make is that I'm fairly confident that it will be decided within the next 12 to 18 months.
Is there any chance of having a second referendum?
Yes, I think there is a possibility. I think if Parliament won't approve an agreement, and if Parliament doesn't want the UK to leave without an agreement, there would, in those circumstances, I'm not recommending this, I'm not arguing for this, I'm not saying this is what should happen, but in those circumstances, there are only two other possibilities. One is that there is a general election, which might change the arithmetic, yes, the parliamentary mathematics, and the other possibility is that there could be another referendum in which people are confronted with the option of leaving with a deal, a specific deal, or leaving with no deal, and the alternative of continuing with the deal we have now, which means remaining in the EU. Is that possible? Is a second referendum possible? Yes, it's possible. It's true there was a referendum that decided we should leave, but that was in the last Parliament. I'm not arguing that it should be reversed, but constitutionally, is there any legal reason or constitutional reason why it shouldn't be reversed by another referendum? No, that could happen.
You have been very keen to modernise Parliament. What changes had you made so far?
Well, I tried to change within the chamber and change without. The change I've made within the chamber, Louisa, is to try to make Parliament more dynamic, more urgent, more topical, more lively, more unpredictable, and in particular more available to ordinary MPs to question, probe, scrutinise the government. In other words, the legislature, Parliament, holding to account the executive, the government. I have granted 636 urgent questions over the last 10 years, which is for the Speaker to decide upon, which means me saying the government must come and explain itself on this subject. That's the major change I've made within the chamber. Without the chamber, outside the chamber, the main changes I have made are threefold. First, I thought it's silly that we have a shooting gallery, but we have no nursery where MPs and staff can pay to put their children to improve the work-life balance. Well, these days we have a very successful nursery, but the shooting gallery was closed down because it was underused. That was the first change. The second was I wanted to have a digital, high-tech, interactive, state-of-the-art education centre which shows young people visiting Parliament how we progressed from 800 years ago, the signing of the Magna Carta, the basic rights of citizens, to the modern democracy and the rights and responsibilities of UK residents today. And the third change was I've tried to make Parliament look a little more like the country. So what does that mean? Well, I've tried to change the staff makeup so that we have more women and more members of the ethnic minorities in senior positions in the House.
In your opinion, who has been the most impactful British politician?
The most impactful British politician? Well, I think if I look back over the centuries, I would say the ordinary MP who's had more influence than any other I can think of off the top of my head is William Wilberforce, who was a backbench MP. He was never a minister in a government, but he pursued a campaign to abolish the slave trade. So he is rightly revered as one of the great parliamentarians of all time. And I would say, as a backbencher, I doubt there's ever been anybody more, as you put it, impactful or influential. If I were picking people who'd been ministers or prime ministers, I think in the 20th century, I would say the most notable war leader was Churchill, by far. And I would say amongst peacetime prime ministers, the two who have been most impactful were Clement Attlee in the post-war period, who helped set up the welfare state, the National Health Service, the wider welfare state, and made a major difference to the lives of ordinary working people. And I would say Margaret Thatcher. I think Margaret Thatcher was a transformative prime minister. If I were allowed one more, I would say amongst prime ministers, Tony Blair was a very, very significant post-war leader. Now, his reputation is very much defined by Iraq, and his reputation has been greatly damaged by the experience of the conduct of the war and what flowed from it. But if you look at his overall record, he did achieve significant change in the country. He forced the Conservatives to change, just as Mrs. Thatcher had forced Labour to change. And he did fight 3 elections as leader of his party, and he won all of them, just as Mrs. Thatcher fought 3 elections as leader of her party and won all of them. So, of all time, Wilberforce. I would say as a war leader, Churchill, and then I would say Attlee, Thatcher, and Blair.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you all for watching this edition of the interview. See you soon.
Muchas gracias to you, Luisa, for your questions and your interest and your patience.
Muchas gracias, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure for us.